Good day and welcome inside the Red Mile Rundown. This is episode 26 and we're off wildcard chasing. Welcome inside another episode here and thank you everyone for making this part of your podcast rotations. I am co-host Johnny Soap and alongside me as always, Robert Munich. How are we doing, Robert?
I'm doing great. Had a great weekend, energized, fired up to talk about the Calgary Flames. I can't wait.
Going to be a great conversation today. Before we get into that, again, thank you for all your downloads and shares. We implore all of you and ask you to please smash that 5-star rating and review button and tell your friends about us as well. Help us grow and help us continue to bring these awesome shows to you. Robert, Flames back on the road this week, going back out east. This one, though, not going to be as high end as the last one they were on. A little bit less travel, a little bit easier maybe on the boys there. How excited are you for the road trip this week compared to the last one?
Yeah, I mean, you can't even compare the two road trips. The last one was insane, just the amount of travel they were doing, going from the eastern United States down to Florida, back up to the east, then down to Texas, and then back home. Like that was a crazy road trip. So this one's not going to be quite as bad for them. And, they're not facing the craziest competition. Toronto, they're playing their worst hockey of the season right now. Mm-hmm. I know people are going to be listening to this tomorrow and it's going to be like, 6-0 win for Toronto. And I'm going to look like an idiot for saying that, but they're not playing their best. And then you look at teams like New Jersey, the Islanders, the Rangers, they're all kind of hovering around 500 in their last 10 games. None of them are really playing their best hockey of the season right now. So, these points are very gettable for the Flames. I think if, just because of the way the standings are right now, I think if you're Calgary, you're probably looking at 5 or 6 points on this road trip. Like you need to do that to stay in this race, especially with the way St. Louis and Vancouver and Utah are playing right now. So a very important road trip if you're looking to make the playoffs. And it's, it's very gettable, like I said. So I'm looking forward to watching these games.
The best thing about the Flames on this road trip as well is they don't have to travel a lot. You're playing 3 of the New York-based teams in that area there. You're probably going to stay at the same hotel type thing and try to bus your way around that place. And you've got games in hand around these wildcard teams around you. You need these points. Like you said, they're very gettable. And all 4 of these teams you're facing on this road trip are different spots and trying to do different things. And so, but if you play your game here and if your team playoffs, the path is there for you to get these points and remain in this race because Vancouver's ahead of you by 2 in the wild card race. St. Louis jumped ahead of the Flames on the weekend. Utah's tied with the Flames now. So the Flames saving grace right now will be those games in hand. But in order to use those games in hand, you got to be successful here. It starts with this road trip. Looking forward to those games here as well this week.
Yeah, I mean, and like the Flames, I just want to say,
jump in.
They got 3 games in hand on the St. Louis Blues right now, 2 games in hand on the Vancouver Canucks, 2 games in hand on Utah. They have to take advantage of this. Like if they start to fall out of this and they gotta end up going 10-3 in their last 13 games or something like that, the season's over because that's just not going to happen. So they have to have a winning record on this road trip here if they want to make the playoffs.
That last road trip the Flames are on. Not to relive the past here, people were so happy the Flames got out of that with half the points. They went 500 on that road trip, and people are very happy. You can't go 500 on this road trip and be happy if you're trying to get where you're trying to get as a Calgary Flames. You need to win 3 or 4 of these games. You need to get the majority of these points on this road trip to stay in this playoff hunt, this wild card chase, and to put yourself back in that driver's seat. The Flames allowed Vancouver to jump ahead of them and give them the driver's seat. They've allowed now St. Louis to catch up to them. So you've got to get the points on this road trip. It's very important that the Flames do so. If your team playoffs, if your team tank, you're looking at it like, hey, licking your chops a little bit. We'll get into that a little bit later, though, in the show. To be successful on this road trip, you're going to need your head coach to kind of get his head straight here to make sure that he has the proper lineups. He's missing a guy in Mikael Backlund with injury. He's missing Connor Zary for 1 more game with the suspension, and he's been talked about a lot on social media. We're talking to Ryan Huska here. He's been taking a lot of flack on social media here, Robert, the last little while, especially after that shootout decision against Vancouver, where he picked a couple of guys that weren't exactly in form, and Sharon Govich and Anderson to go in the shootout, left guys that you thought could go in that game in the shootout. Kadri didn't shoot. What do you make of the social media banter back and forth on the job Ryan Huska's done? And where do you come out in the whole conversation here on Ryan Huska and the job he's done with the Flames so far?
Kind of like all things in life, I think it kind of comes somewhere in between. I see in the mainstream media, it's nothing but a ton of praise for Ryan Huska. If you listen to people within the Calgary media scene who are there on a day-to-day basis, they kind of make it sound like he should be getting Jack Adams votes. They make it kind of sound, this incredible coach, and then you look on social media from some of the fans, and it's the complete opposite. And they can't stand some of the coaching decisions Ryan Huska makes, and they think that he's kind of living off of Dustin Wolf right now. And I do think it's kind of somewhere in between those two takes. Like the way I view it is when you take a look at the good stuff that Ryan Huska does, in my opinion, it's a lot of intangibles, and it's a lot of stuff that he brings to the table off the ice. So you take a look at his leadership capabilities. Looks like the players really respect him. It looks like he has command of that locker room, just based off like what you hear and what you watch on the chase and stuff like that. I also think he's been a really good culture builder, because when he took this job on, the Flames culture was a mess. Daryl Sutter is a great tactician style coach. He's probably one of the best X and O's coaches of all time. And, we saw that with the results, but off the ice, Daryl was a mess in his last season in Calgary. And, he had basically lit that locker room on fire and walked away, and Huska had to put it out, and he had to basically rebuild the culture from the ground up. And I do think he's done a really good job of that. You just listen to the way his players talk about him. You listen to the way the players now describe, their love for the Calgary Flames organization and their willingness to stay. I think Ryan Huska has played a massive role in that. So I give him all the credit in the world for those types of things. Even something like dealing with the media. That's a huge part of Ryan Huska's job, is because he's pretty much in front of the camera talking to these people every single day. And I really like the way he treats the media. He gives a lot of thoughtful answers. He's very respectful. I really appreciate the way he goes about his business in that regard. So all of that stuff, I think, has been great. But then you take a look at the results, and they really haven't been there. So, in terms of the good, in terms of the positives, where are you at on Huska, and kind of where do you see things?
Yeah, I love what you said there. I want to add to that as well, that he takes accountability as well. There's always accountability in his press conferences, and it's always about about the collective. It's never about him trying to take the credit from these guys as well. So I really like that from him as well. I love the point you made there about the culture and about what he's done with the group here. And he tends to really go to bat for his players as well. Really trying to talk up guys that need to be talked up, and really trying to do that kind of thing. And he tries to send messages to his players, try to help keep his players fresh, going, on point, on target here. We'll talk about the skill and stuff he has to deal with a little bit later here, but I enjoy Ryan Huska and what he brings to the table. I think he does a really good job of trying to manage all of his responsibilities as an NHL head coach. I think he does a really good job of trying to delegate what he needs to delegate to his assistant coaches. I think he's built himself a pretty good bench of guys that he knows to trust. Even guys like Jamie Pringle up in the booth, where he knows he can trust the judgment of his assistant coaches to get their jobs done as well. And I think that this guy he's a hockey guy who's always trying to continue to learn his role and what he's supposed to be doing on that bench. Running an NHL bench is a lot harder than the average guy knows. Even things that I might think I know about running an NHL bench, I know I'm probably wrong on. It's a hard job to do. And when you're trying to manage that bench and manage a room and manage the media, manage a personal life on top of all of that, that's a lot for one person to handle. So overall, I like what Ryan Huska does off ice as well for this group. The community as well. He's always in the community helping out as well. So I'm with you on Ryan Huska here of off ice stuff and what he brings to the table. On ice as well, I think that he does a lot of positive things on that bench, on ice as well. I think he does a lot of things where he trusts his players to go out and perform a system. We might not like the system that he's employed on ice for the tactic wise of things, but he's trying the best with what he's been given, in my opinion, of the caliber of players that the Flames have, trying to get the best out of guys. Is he always successful? Absolutely not. Does he make some interesting decisions? Absolutely he does. And so he's not perfect. No coach is. But overall, for me, I've enjoyed what Ryan Huska brings to the table. And I'm still at the point where I defend him a little bit. I'm not ready to give up on the coach by any means. I've seen that on social media. But there is lots to learn as well when you're Ryan Huska, and there's a lot more that he could be doing better. And let's get into that as well. Things that that Ryan Huska might be better at, might need to get better at in order to become a better head coach. Things like player usages or shootout usages. What are some areas that for Ryan Huska, that you'd like to see him work on, that you'd like to see him improve on? Because for me, that's the biggest one. Is just sometimes his player decision for player personnel is a little bit questionable for me. Where do you stand here?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say because, like you'd mentioned there, the roster that he's been given to work with lacks talent. It lacks a lot of talent. I don't think that they should be 32nd in goals scored. So I think somewhere in his defensive systems, somewhere in his neutral zone and forecheck, I feel like there's got to be ways for him to be able to open things up a little bit to create more offense. Because when you take a look at the Flames lineup, top to bottom, it's not like 30th, 31st, 32nd in the league in terms of talent level. Like, there's more to give with this group of players. And, you know, I don't know how much of that is on his system. I don't know how much of that is on the players, how much of it is bad shooting luck. Like, I don't know where all that stands, but all I know is that they are 32nd in scoring. They are very boring to watch on a lot of nights. I really wish that they would play a more entertaining style of hockey. They're like, you know, the first 30 minutes of the Colorado game on Friday, it was atrocious. I mean, they had 3 shots on net. They weren't generating anything. It just looked like they were sitting back trying to hold on for dear life. And I don't like that. I don't like that kind of style of hockey. So there's, like I said, there's got to be a way for him to open things up a little bit. That's kind of like the one area where I'd like to see him change things up a little bit.
We talk about this Flames team needing high-end skill, and so when you come to him trying to put player usage on ice, he's very limited in what he can do here. I don't know how you open this team up, though. Like, I'll put it to you that way a little bit here. Is he might have. We might look at it the same way I look at it. We're like, well, who's going to open up this offense? Who's going to be that guy that goes through the neutral zone, carrying that puck at high-end speed to create some offense, open things up? They just don't have anyone from the back end that's going to do that. You know, you're jealous of guys like a Cale Makar or a Quinn Hughes that can do that kind of thing. The Flames don't have that. They don't have a guy up front like a McKinnon that can back off the defenders, flying through the neutral zone. They don't have a guy like a Proud Kaprizov who can fly through the zone and take a couple of guys with him. So this is going to be a team effort for the Flames to create more offense. And so I just wonder how much of this roster construction is prohibiting Huska from allowing these guys to open up, because it doesn't have those guys to do so. But then at the same time, you look at the system that he implores, he doesn't even try to allow a little bit of that freedom. The structure that he implores on this ice is all built around, we got to make sure we have a fortress around Dustin Wolf and work from there. And it's all about trying to have a counterattack. And they just don't have those guys that can take that counterattack high end the other direction. Kadri can do certain things. Coronado can do certain things. Connor Zary, when he's on his game, can do certain things. But you just don't have those guys that just open up the ice for this Flames team. So everything for me feels so hard. And part of that might be Huska's system, but part of that also might be the lack of high-end skill. And so how do you open up this team? How do you make this team have more offense, can create more offense? Well, you got to add skill to it. And so that's where I think the Flames are stuck a little bit. They're stuck with a roster that's very flawed, and with a coach who knows how to get the best out of a situation. Just you don't have one to help out the other more than the other. And you don't have an answer for either way until you get that high-end skill or a coach that's willing to try something different. But I don't know where you go from there, to be honest, if you're Ryan Huska, because if you're not playing a defensive system, what are the Flames doing? They're probably going to get caved in, because you're going to be relying even more on Dustin Wolf, more on Dan Vladar, in my opinion, because you've got to protect those guys with what this roster is and how this roster is built here.
Well, here, John, just like,
yeah, go ahead.
One thing that frustrates me a little bit with the Huska narrative, mainly from the mainstream media, is that they make it sound like he is like this defensive wizard, and that the Flames play this like outstanding defensive game, and to have this incredible structure. And like the part that frustrates me is that, you know, Huska has implemented those types of systems where it's like batten down the hatches, like you said, get in front of Dustin Wolf, create that wall, you know, don't let any chances from the inside of the ice. And they play that super defensive game, but yet their defensive results have been pretty poor this year. Like you take a look at some of the underlying numbers. So this is all at 5-on-5. They're 24th in the NHL in high danger percentages, 22nd in expected goals for percentage, 21st in scoring chances for percentage. And then when you take a look at it from like a per 60 minutes basis, they're 22nd in the NHL in shot attempts against per 60, 21st in high danger chances against per 60, 20th in scoring chances against per 60. So you take a look at all these numbers, they're in the bottom half of the league in everything, in every sort of shot metric. At least this is per natural stat trick. In terms of public models, they're literally in the bottom 12, bottom 15 of every single one of those categories. Yet Ryan Huska says, you know, implements this type of system where it's just defense all the time. Don't take risks. Don't let the defense join the rush, like all those types of things. So that's the part that's kind of frustrating for me. It's like, yes, the off ice stuff is great with the culture and all that kind of stuff that I was talking about before, but when you take a look at the results on the ice, they have not been good, especially defensively. And then, you know, special teams, they're 18th on the power play, 26th on the penalty kill. They can't score goals at both at 5-on-5 and on special teams. Like, to me, like there's like I said, there's talk about if the Flames end up getting the playoffs, that Brian Huska should get Jack Adams votes, and I'm like, I don't think that's right. I don't agree with that opinion whatsoever, because you listen to all those numbers I just listed off, and then you take a look at the goaltending, and the Flames have the second best save percentage as a team at 5-on-5. They have the 9th best save percentage as a team in all situations. And it's Dustin Wolf that's making Huska look good on the ice. I don't think that's an unfair statement, because, you know, like we mentioned, there's been some nice things that Huska's done, but you take a look at everything, goal scoring, defense, special teams, all the stuff that he has his hands on, it's all really, really bad. It's all like some of the worst in the NHL, but their goaltending is like top 3 in the league right now. So it's interesting. It's you want to praise Ryan Huska. Part of you wants to praise him and say he's a great coach, but then when you take a look at like the raw data and you take a look at the numbers and what you watch on the ice, you're not that impressed by it. So I'm kind of stuck in the middle with Huska. I like some of the stuff he does. I don't like the on ice results. It's interesting. It's kind of an interesting place to be as a fan when you're evaluating a coach.
I'm so glad you jumped in with those numbers, because I was about to throw it to you asking about those numbers, because when you look at what Ryan Huska and what I talked about with the lack of offense in this team and how he's built it around trying to protect Dustin Wolf and how he relies on Dustin Wolf, but then you look at the numbers and the numbers weren't good at all. Like, just as you laid out there, where it's like, yes, but they're still bleeding a lot of chances. They're still giving up the fair number of shots. They're still not very good on the penalty kill, despite the recent form of the PK. They're still not where you want them to be as a defensive unit either. This team really lacks that high-end skill. And when you talk high-end skill, people are automatically going to jump to your McKinnons and your McDavids and those type of guys. My mind also jumps towards, where's that high-end defenseman? All due respect to Mackenzie Weegar, the disappearance of Rasmus Anderson's game, we don't have that high-end guy. We don't have, and I'm not even talking as high as a Cale Makar. I'm talking high end, like where's our Petrangelo type of defenseman, a Shea Weber, a Josh Morrissey type guy, a guy where he'd be a little bit heads above the rest of these guys to help lead the group. We don't have that. Again, all due respect to Mackenzie Weegar, he does a really good job, and he's a very good defenseman, very capable at what he does, but he's not that high end type of guy that you need to help push that offense, to push that system, to push that team ahead. And so when you have the lack of skill on this ice, you're relying on the same guys every single day, and your goaltender's bailing you out, you're gonna get a lot of love in the media from this Jack Adams thing. He's not a Jack Adams guy for me either, Robert, but I get where people are coming from. But you got to dive beyond what you're just seeing sometimes with your base counting stats. You got to dive a little bit further. Well, why does the Flames team look this way? Is it because of the coaching? Is it because of the players? And right now, the Flames are the Calgary Flames because Dustin Wolf has decided he's going to be the next Patrick Waugh type goaltender and just carry this team as far as he can carry them. And so I like Ryan Huska, and I like overall what he brings to the table. He just doesn't have the high-end skill to help him get to that next level as a coach. And I don't know if he's that kind of coach either that can elevate a roster. And so that therein puts my opinion on the guy right in the middle as well, because you can't give him too much credit for what you're seeing, but at the same time, you can't give him too much blame for what you're seeing because the roster's flawed at the same time. So that's
totally fair.
It's a little of both sides. And I don't want to be speaking of both sides of my mouth at all, Robert, but that's where I see it.
The one question I have, though, is like when I think of great coaches, I think of guys who are able to elevate players, like you said. Like
100%.
You're kind of questioning Huska's ability to elevate his team. And I think that's totally fair because when you look at the Calgary Flames this season, who on this roster would you look at and say they've had a great year? Like take their expectations heading into the season. Who has exceeded those expectations? Who's the guy that's really stepped up and played great hockey this year? And that list is really small right now.
Besides the goalie?
There's Dustin Wolf, obviously, and how much of that has to do with Ryan Huska? I don't think it has anything to do with Ryan Huska, to be honest. The only other guys I can think of are Kevin Ball, who I think has been outstanding this year. I don't know if enough people are talking about how good that guy has been.
Mm-hmm.
I would actually argue Kevin Ball's been the second best defenseman on the team this year. I would have Uyghur number one, and I would have Kevin Ball number two, because I don't think Rasmus Anderson's played well at all this year.
No argument here.
And then, outside of Ball, I would argue Mackenzie Weegar has had a really good year. Outside of that, I don't put anybody else in that category. And I know this drives me crazy. We continue to hear about how great Jonathan Huberdeau has been this year. Like, just the glazing for Huberdeau has just been insane, in my opinion. You listen to some people talk about him, and they're making it sound like, yes, like he is back. He's had this fantastic season. Like, Jonathan Huberdeau has been great. Yet you take a look at his numbers. I mean, he's only got 49 points in 65 games. He's only got 24 assists on the season. It's great that he's scored some more goals. He's going to the net. He's doing some of those more simple things that he wasn't doing in his first couple years in Calgary. That's fantastic, and congratulations to Jonathan for that. At the same time, though, he has not been that good. Like, he has less assists than he has goals. Like, he only has 24 assists this year. This guy came into Calgary regarded as one of the great playmakers in the National Hockey League. He has 24 assists this year. That's it. Like, he has not been that good. I know I just keep hearing, Huberdeau has just been fantastic this year, and he's totally turned around his game. He's revolutionized his game. And I don't buy that at all. I appreciate the work ethic. I appreciate the fact that he is scoring more goals this year and that he's trying to be a better defensive player. It's still not enough. That's completely off topic, but I had to get that off my chest. It's just been pissing me off. But like I said, like, I'll throw it to you. Who is Huska elevated this year? If you take a look at like some of the younger players, you just take a look around the entire roster. Who are the guys that have really elevated their game under Ryan Huska this year? I don't know if there's that many.
I don't know if there's anybody, to be honest. And that's not taking away from Ryan Huska, because, as I mentioned, I don't think this is the kind of coach that elevates a roster. I think this is a teacher of the game. I think this is a guy that's a motivator, and he relies on his players to take it to the next level each and every single day. I don't think anything that Ryan Huska's done, other than put Kevin Ball in situations, has elevated Kevin Ball at all. I think that's a lot to do with how Kevin Ball's adapted to Calgary, how his game has grown, how he's matured as a player, and how he's learned to work alongside Rasmus Andersson, regardless of how Rasmus Andersson's been playing. I think you look at a guy like Dustin Wolf, there's not much a coach can say to a goaltender that's going to elevate a goaltender's game other than go stop the puck. That's just a lot of the goaltender working and doing what he wants to do. And Mackenzie Weegar is just that kind of player who's going to every single day give you the best that he can give. So Ryan Huska, he might not be that high-end coach that's going to bring out all of this stuff in these players. Much like you see from Sullivan in Pittsburgh when he was winning Stanley Cups, getting the most out of the guys like Phil Kessel, guys that aren't fleet of foot. I don't think you see that from Ryan Huska. This is a guy who is a teacher of the game, and he's a motivator, and hoping that his players can take on. Which is why I'm always right in the middle when it comes to the Ryan Huska conversation, where I'm not going to put all the blame on him, but I'm also not going to he's not without blame as well. Whether that's a flaw in my thinking on Ryan Huska or not, I don't know. Whether that's a flaw in his bench or how he approaches things, that I don't know, and I don't have an answer for that. Let me ask you one thing about him. How much is he missing Mikael Backlund with Mikael Backlund's injury, or are you seeing very little from that relationship here? I don't know how that relates in your eyes, in your opinion, but how much do you think he's going to be missing Mikael Backlund here with his injury?
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive blow to the team. If you were to kind of do power rankings in terms of the most important players, like who's the guy that this team just cannot lose, Backlund's right near the top of that list because of the role he plays. Obviously, offensively, he hasn't been very good this year, but he takes on so much responsibility on the defensive side of things, whether it's taking draws in the defensive zone, taking on the hardest matchups, being the first guy over the boards on the penalty kill. Like, this guy, he does so much for this team. I think he's wildly underappreciated for his time in Calgary. I think he's been such a good player for them, and nobody else on this Flames roster right now has the same sort of skill set that Backlund does. Like, Nazem Kadri is not a great defensive player. Morgan Frost is not a great defensive player. Sharon Govich is not a good defensive player. So you have all these guys that are going to be playing center ice. And, Connor's there. He's still learning the game. Who out of those guys is going to take on the Austin Matthews of the world, and the McKinnons and the Panarins and the Nico Heischers? Like, that's going to be really, really difficult to replace those minutes for Huska. And then there's also the off-ice component too. Like, Backlund's your captain. Like, he's your leader, and for him not to be in the room and not to be on this trip, during the most important stretch of games of the season, that's a big blow for this team. So I think it's a massive loss for this group. You really hope that he can come back while the Calgary Flames are still in the mix for a playoff spot, because he's a major difference maker from the defensive side of things. And I've seen a lot of people kind of shitting on Mikael Backlund this year, and I don't really like it. Like, I get it, he has not been good in the offensive zone, but I still think we can still appreciate the leadership and the defensive game that he brings to the table. So it's a big loss, especially when you take a look at some of the guys that the Flames are going to have to match up with on this trip, whether it's, like I said, Panarin and JT Miller in New York. You got Austin Matthews and Marner and Nylander. In New Jersey, they have a lot of high-end talent. I know they don't have Jack Hughes, but they still have a lot of good players there. Like, those are big, important minutes that Backlund could have been playing in. So, like, it's going to be. I put it out on Twitter. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs without him. I think the season is done without him. That's kind of the way I see it.
Ryan Huska is going to miss Mikael Backlund for sure, and this is going to test what Ryan Huska can do with that bench and with that room as well. You saw Kadri go up against McKinnon on the weekend, and it didn't start out so great for the Flames. We saw that first half of that game. It was a downhill battle for the Flames. They were fighting everything off for half that game, and it puts a little bit of pause into your thinking and what you were just saying there, Robert, about who's going to take up and step up and do these minutes. And people can rank all they want about how Mikael Backlund's not been the player we saw 3-4 years ago, and that's fair. But at the same time, who's stepping up to do that role? Who's stepping up to take those minutes, take on the responsibilities? Who's that first guy over the board for the penalty kill? Who's the first guy over the boards to kill off a game? That's all Mikael Backlund stuff. That's stuff that he does. He does quietly. He does effectively. And so this is the leader of the Flames, gone for a very, very important stretch for the Flames. And it's going to test a lot of the mental side of the game for the Flames. Are they ready for battle without their captain? Can Ryan Huska have this bench prepared to take on these high-end guys, the Marners, the Matthews, the Heischers, the Millers, and all these guys on this road trip? That's going to be a big hurdle for this team. And just what you said there about this team isn't making the playoffs without Mikael Backlund, for me, that's not even a hot take. I think that's an actual fact, because without your leader, without your captain, sometimes your ship just is going to go down. the Flames have a huge task in front of them without Mikael Backlund, and this injury is a season derailer potential here for the Flames. It'll be very interesting to see how they match up with the other opposition and who's going to take on certain minutes, or is it if it's a group committee thing? Because you're asking a lot from different guys here that we've relied on Mikael Backlund to do for 6, 7, 8 years here now, where it was just simple. Oh, Mikael Backlund's on the bench. There's McDavid. Oh, there's Mikael Backlund. Go kill that penalty for us. Oh, it's Minnesota on a Wednesday and we're up by 1. Let's go finish that game off, Michael. It's been him, and so we're going to see the Flames try to do this without their captain for the first time in a long time here, and I don't know how well that's going to be or go forward of this team here. He wasn't producing a ton of offense, Robert, but how much do you think this is going to affect their ability to create more going forward here without Mikael Backlund, to potentially have a successful penalty kill still here without him? The offense struggles with him in the lineup. How much are they going to struggle without him in the lineup?
Yeah, I don't think the offense is the issue because, like you said, I mean, he hasn't really done anything, especially since the calendar flipped to 2025. I mean, you can't rely on him for offense at all. What I think is going to be the issue is that you take a look at this Flames team. I ran through all the numbers already. They're not a very good defensive team, as is.
Shocking.
They're 26 on the penalty kill, as is. And now you take your best defensive forward away from the team. Like, how much worse can those numbers get? What I'm concerned about is the Flames. They're already the 32nd ranked team in goals scored. So we know that they can't score. Now you lose your best defensive player. How many more goals are you going to allow? That's what I really worry about. Mainly on the defensive side of things. I think Backlund is important enough where we could see an additional goal for every 2 games, something like that. Instead of giving up 7 over 2 games, they're going to give up 8 because he's not in the lineup and he's not there to shut down the other team's top players. And the Flames are going to continue to be the worst scoring team in the NHL. So you're giving up more, you're not scoring more. I think it's a bit of a recipe for disaster for this team. It's going to be really interesting to see if they can stay in the mix without this guy. I'm a little skeptical, and I saw people I posted that, and I saw people on Twitter saying, we had the exact same thing happen in 2015 when Mark Giordano went down with an injury. But the difference between the Flames that season and this season is that team in 14-15 could actually score. You go take a look at their goal scoring from February to the end of the season. There are a lot of games where they score 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 goals. With that top line with Gaudreau, Monahan, Hoodler, they could really pour it on. This Flames team is the complete opposite. There is no magic. There's nothing offensively right now going on for this group. So that's why I think I don't want to say it could get ugly, but I could see them falling, a little bit out of this race and ultimately getting close to that top 10 pick. I think that's how important Mikael Backlund is.
Yeah, you mentioned there something that got me thinking here. If you're going to go from giving up 7 to 8 goals over a 2-game stretch, that's not huge. It's not massive, but it's just enough that you slide back, and sliding back just a little bit puts you behind Utah, puts you closer to where Anaheim is. Anaheim's only 6 points back of the Flames. And so just giving up that little bit more than the Flames have already been giving up, is it going to be enough to sink their opportunity to be in a wild card spot? It's that easy it's that small of a gap, and it's that easy to slide out of it. So it's really important that if they want to stay in this race and they want to be at playoff team, that a guy or 2 or 3 or 4 are going to have to pull up their socks and are going to have to make up for the lack of having Mikael Backlund in that lineup. And that's a lot easier said than done. I don't know if it actually is possible to get done, because you look at the guys who could potentially fill that role of Mikael Backlund. Nazem Kadri's not known to be a defender. Connor Zary plays a good 2-way game, but he's not near that level. Morgan Frost would have to come a long way in his defensive development to take over that type of role. Sharon Govich, don't even get me started. You're looking at Wayne Rooney as your next best defensive 2-way forward, and well, people are going to laugh and throw things at whatever device they're listening to this podcast on, saying that Rooney shouldn't even be in the lineup. So where do you go? Where are the answers to cover up for Mikael Backlund? There simply isn't any answers, in my opinion, on this roster. It's going to have to be a committee thing, and this could be a slow descent down the standings a little bit for the Flames, and this opens up the door for the Vancouvers, for the St. Louises and the Utahs, and don't look over your shoulder, but the Anaheim Ducks to potentially even come up here and take over you here if you're not careful enough. So the lack of offense is absolutely concerning. The lack of Mikael Backlund is absolutely concerning for this team, and Ryan Huska's got a big job in front of him to do. So at the end of the day here, the Flames have a big road trip and a big opportunity, but they also have the decks kind of stacked against them here. What do you make of their playoff chances, Robert? I know you said they're not a playoff team without Mikael Backlund, but do you have any hope if you're on team playoff here with this road in front of them, even with these roadblocks?
Yeah, I mean, the hope is number 32. That's the hope, is that Dustin Wolf can continue to play at the level that he's played at all season. So pretty much when you have Dustin Wolf in your lineup, anything is possible in terms of wins. So I think, from that perspective, there is some hope. At the same time, though, like, I ran the numbers yesterday. So the Flames have 17 games left this season. I'm going to guess it's going to take 90 to 94 points to secure that second wildcard spot. So if you want to get to 94 points, they're going to have to go 11-5-1. And 11-5-1 is a points percentage of .676. And if you take a look at the Flames' 17 game segments throughout the entire season, they haven't even eclipsed the .600 winning percentage mark. So now we're expecting them to go 11-5-1 and be that .676 winning percentage. And that's going to be tough, especially when you take a look at all the great opponents that they're going to have to face between now and the end of the season. It's not going to be easy. And then, if you want to get to 92 points, you got to go 10-6-1. With the way this team scores goals without Mikael Backlund, with the way that they're defending right now, I just don't see it happening. It sucks to say, because I'd rather see them make the playoffs than miss and lose that first round draft pick. So from that perspective, yeah, it's too bad. But man, like, can you see this team with the way that they're playing right now, the current state that they're in? Can you see them going like 11-5-1 or 10-6-1? I mean, I don't see it right now.
The one part that I was going to make a bit of an argument, but then you said, as you see them playing right now, and that's the key. There is a world out there where I can see them happening, but that involves the Sharon Govich getting back to a little bit more normal. That involves guys like Frost and Azari taking steps forward in development. But as they're playing right now, and what we saw against the Avalanche was very concerning for part of that game, you look at it and you're like, I just don't see it. Because when you play against teams that have the skill and that work, this team is going to be second to everything. The pucks, the face-offs, the power play, everything is second to the other team. And when you're always second to the higher end skill teams, and that's you're playing down the stretch here, it's really hard to see that path to the playoffs for the Calgary Flames. Could they surprise against, say, the Toronto Maple Leafs on Monday night and win that hockey? Absolutely they could. But I could also see them losing that game quite handily. So it's a lot on number 32. And as good as Dustin Wolf is, and as strong as his Calder case can be, and even Hart case and Vezina case, whatever case you want to make for him, you can make those cases, and he's had a very strong season. That's a lot to put on the rookie netminder, and it's a lot of pressure, and as good as he can perform under pressure, that's either going to crack down the road here, down the stretch here, the rookie wall could hit here, or the Flames are just going to end up running out of runway at the end of the day here. So I don't see a path to the playoffs, but I don't want to be a negative Nancy at the same time, because I'm with you. I want to see this team make the playoffs. A playoff series is much better than sitting at home in April and watching all these other teams have a good time in the postseason here. They are very close, though, Robert, to dropping down to the bottom 10. The path is there for that as well, with the injury to Mikael Backlund, with the lack of goal scoring, with what's the schedules in front of them here. Which path is more likely for you, though, here, Robert? There's a question. Are they more likely to make the playoffs, or are they more likely to be a top 10, or are we really looking, as we've been talking about all season long here,
Yeah,
about
I mean,
the absolute peak sadness.
so yeah, I mean, like I said, they're gonna have to go like 11-5-1 or 10-6-1 if they want to make the playoffs, or at least have a chance to make the playoffs. And then if you want to get into the bottom 10, they're probably gonna have to go something like 5-11-1 in their final 17 games, and they haven't had a stretch that bad this season. So when you take those two things into consideration, my guess is that we are in for peak sadness. We are in for this team
Sweet
to
night.
finish in 22nd or 21st, and the Montreal Canadiens end up getting the 11th or 12th or 13th overall pick. That's kind of the direction I see this going. Because of the way Dustin Wolf's playing, I see this team kind of going like hovering around 500 for the rest of the season, and I don't think that'll be enough to make it, and I also don't think that'll be enough to get into the bottom 10. So my guess, and I had this prediction at the beginning of the season, I guess I'll stick to it. I do think they'll end up in peak sadness, which is very depressing because that ultimately will make this an irrelevant season of Calgary Flames hockey. It'll make this a lost season. The only good thing to come from it will be Dustin Wolf's emergence. Outside of that, you'll have no playoffs. You'll have no high first round draft pick. You won't look back on the season and think about all the incredible goals and entertaining hockey you watch. I think it's been a pretty boring season from an entertainment standpoint, and that's kind of how I see it going. It's very depressing. I'm sorry for. I'm making this just a super sad podcast. I apologize, but that's just kind of how I see it going.
I remember that conversation where we were talking about predictions and where we thought this Flames team would finish at the end of the season. And we had the conversation where, what would you like from this season? Where would you like the season to go? And at the end of the day, we both agreed that there were pretty much three different ways this could go. A Flames going to be in that lottery, and that's kind of where you wanted to be if your team tank. The Flames somehow find a way to squeak into the playoffs, and they're playing a first-round series, and you're happy with that too. The one thing that we both said that we didn't want is exactly the picture that Robert has painted on the podcast today. And the kind of where I see things going too, where we're looking at that 9th, 10th spot in the West, going to sit at 22nd overall in the league, going to give the Montreal Canadiens that 13th, 14th pick, wherever heck it ends up being. And we go on with our lives in this offseason thinking, what did we accomplish here? And that's where I'm at with this Flames here. What was Conroy's plan coming into this year, and what did he hope to accomplish? Because for me, the only thing he's accomplished this year was he didn't trade a bunch of guys out, and he got himself another center. There's nothing else that's accomplished. If you do not make the playoffs and you do not have a lottery pick, what have you accomplished this season for the Flames? And that is a depressing thought here. Robert,
it'll almost be like the bubble season where they played awful hockey. There was no one in the stands. Like that was a really, really difficult year to watch. But at least that year, they come out with, I think it was the 11th overall pick, and they take Matt Coronado. So, I mean, there's a little bit of silver lining there. They also discovered the magic of Gaudreau, Lindholm, Tkachuk at the end of that season, which ultimately led them to winning their division. So there was a couple good things to come from that year. But when you take a look back on this year, it's going to be Dustin Wolf, and that's kind of it.
Pretty much. Not to be all negative, there's still some excitement left in the season. There's still things to watch. Can Dustin Wolf continue to be at that high level? What can we see? Continually growth of your young guys, Frost and Farabees coming in, your Zaries, your defensemen. What can Kevin Ball do the rest of the season? So there's still things to watch and look forward to, and the hope of the playoffs is still going to be there. We'll see how it works out over the course of the rest of the season for sure, starting with the road trip this week. Robert, final word to you. Anything else that you want to talk to on the Flames this week? Because right now we got a big 4-game road trip that we got to go watch here and see what the Flames can pull out of their hat here with Mikael Backlund.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully they put on an entertaining product for the fans here over the next 17 games and hopefully make a go of it. And basically what you want, and kind of what we were just talking about, is either want them to really go on a great streak here, play exciting hockey, win some games, and get in that playoff mix, or you want the wheels just to completely fall off and 18-wheeler go off the cliff. That's you want that. You don't want anything in between that. It's either win a bunch of games and be competitive, or just lose and lose and lose and lose. If one of those two things happen, I think Flames fans will be pretty happy if they stay kind of in the mushy middle like they've been all season. I think we're in for peak sadness. So,
yippee!
Once again, I apologize for the depressing thoughts here at the end of the podcast, but
that is Robert Munich at Ring of Fire CGY across social media. I'm Vintage Johnny 84 across social media as well. Follow us. Let us know what you hope for, what you think for the rest of the season for the Flames. Enjoy the games this week. And once again, thank you so much for your downloads, listens, and making us part of your podcast rotation. We'll see you next week here on the Red Mile Rundown.